Hi friends, and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. I just finished You Love Me, the third installment in the You series, and if you are not familiar with the You series or you want to skip any spoilers, if you for some reason haven't read the story, watch the show, whatever, go ahead and skip ahead because I want to talk about this book kind of in length. Following the events of the second book, if you've seen the second season of the TV show, Jo moves in with Love. She is pregnant and they buy a house, and he sees a woman through the slats of his fence in his house, and it kind of sparks an interest in him for another woman. And that's kind of like the theme of Jo, is like he's constantly falling in love with women, right? However, the second book ended with him in jail. And we open the book up with Jo moving to this small town. I think it's in like Maine or something like that. And we get the idea that Love, who has since had the baby, basically had him sign away his parental rights and sign a contract saying that he will get $4 million in exchange for him not being in his son's life or like coming around ever again. So he takes the money and he gets a volunteer position at a library in this town that he just moved to. And of course he sees a woman and quickly becomes obsessed with her. And the theme of this book is like Jo is a changed man. He's a good man. So he doesn't want to kill anyone. He doesn't want to kidnap people and anything like that. Like he wants to be a good guy. And he quickly finds out that the woman that he is kind of obsessed with, who is this librarian at the library that he is volunteering with, has a husband and a kid. And so he stalks her and kind of ingratiates himself into her life and also her husband's life in like a very offhanded way, and kind of like takes up like a mentor relationship with her daughter. And so they kind of start this affair and the story progresses from there. He doesn't really kill anyone, spoiler. Know how I'm feeling about this book, because just being completely honest, like I think it's slowly lost like that feeling that the first one had. Like personally, season 1 is my absolute favorite. Book 1 is my favorite. Like I think it just had something so unique to it. And it might be because like I've never read a book like that before, read a character like that before. So then the subsequent books kind of lost a little bit of that charm because I had read a book like that before. I enjoyed myself, but it didn't feel as twisty or as like high stakes as the other books did, because Jo was maintaining this good guy persona. So even though he was stalking people and he was inadvertently involved in crimes, he wasn't committing them himself, and he wasn't like quite as Jo-like as he was in the other books. Felt more passive, I guess. Like his involvement in this woman's life was way more passive, and there was a lot of like repeating dialogue. He used a lot of the same phrases over and over and over again, and it's been some years since I read the first one and the second one or listened to them, so I don't really remember if that's like a thing from the series, but he just used the same phrases over and over again, which is fun for like the first 200 pages, but after that it gets a little bit old. 370 pages, and I would have liked less, I think. I think if it had been less pages, it would have all been more condensed down, and even though there wasn't really a whole lot of slow time going on, I think that the stream of conscious way that this book series is written would have gone a little bit better. He's not really doing much. Like he's very passive. Like he's stalking her, yes, and he's kind of like moving chess pieces behind the scene in her life, but it wasn't really like super high stakes things. Like he wasn't murdering people. By the time that I got to like 300 pages, I was like, good God, can this be over yet? Which is unfortunate because I started off this book and I was absolutely enjoying it, and I enjoyed it. And I think another issue is the ending. The ending felt a little weird to me because like there's only so many times you can recycle a plot line, right? So I think the overall plot is like Jo trying to find love, but he is trying to find what he thinks is love, or someone that is love to him, right? Someone for him to love for the rest of his life. That only goes so far. Like the first 2 books it was interesting because you had Beck in book 1, and then you had Love in book 2, and you kind of had, what is her name? The woman that he was with prior to Candace. And you had Candace like interspersed in those 2 books. And so that was an interesting concept because the first relationship, it kind of mirrors like someone in the dating world. So like your first relationship doesn't work out because of X, Y, and Z, right? And then your second one you think is going to last longer, it's going to be more of a commitment, and you're gonna fall in love and like this is your partner, and then it doesn't work out. But you can only go through that in a literary sense, like so many times before it gets boring. And I think that's the issue that I'm having with the series, and I'm not sure if I'm going to pick the 4th one up. If I do, it'll be on audio because they're good audiobooks and they're fun, but I feel like this is like recycled material, and I almost wish that I had just reread the first one, or I had experienced the first one for the first time, because the novelty has worn off a little bit. And I feel like the ending reveals were a little like weird to me. I know that the author, like, it felt like the author wanted their love story to come to an end, but she didn't know how, and so she like shoved a bunch of weird random like big reveals in there, and it just didn't really make a whole lot of sense, and it felt removed because all of the things that were involved in the story, like all of the reveals were external things, like things to do with the woman that he was with and like her family and her life, and it didn't really have to do with Joe all of that much. So it was like you're less involved because Joe is like your character. Joe, you're in Joe's head the whole time. And because Joe isn't necessarily involved, it's happening to the people around him, it felt less engaging and less important to the plot. And also, this is going to be a spoiler for this book, so I'll put a little spoiler card, but one of the big reveals at the end has to do with her daughter, which is basically that her daughter was being raped by her friend. And she tries to make a move on Joe, basically saying like, you have wanted me this whole time, it's always been about me. This is what felt weird to me, is the mother walks in on them in a compromising position, and she immediately starts blaming the daughter. Obviously, I've never been in like a situation like that. I don't have a daughter or anything like that, so I don't know how I would respond personally, but we never really like got a deeper dive into her character. We get like a paragraph and some sentences of like she felt guilty or whatever for the way that she raised her daughter or the type of mother that she was, but it just was like very jarring and kind of weird. And I think a plot line that was running through this book more so than the other ones is like Joe, this idea of Joe the feminist, like all of the guys, like all of the men that Joe was trying to push out of the women's lives were like raging misogynists. They were saying like awful things about women, and they were just like the stereotypical like toxic masculine men. And Joe was like the uber feminist, basically, is the way that he's presented. And I feel like her reacting like that was supposed to set us up even more to believe that Joe is like this guru with women. I don't know, it was a weird ending. Like, she didn't know how she wanted Joe to have to move on to another family or another woman, another place, and that's kind of where she went with the story, which I don't necessarily agree with, but here we are. So that is enough of that book. If you saw my September, wow, my September TBR, you will know that my TBR is quite full for the month. I'm trying a new like TBR setup. I have some library books that I have to get through first because I have to return them. So let me go grab them and we will pick what I'm gonna read next. So these two So these two actually were not in my TBR video because I forgot them in the other room. So I forgot that I had them, but I have these two, Anxious People and Sparks Like Stars, two pretty emotional contemporaries. And then I also have the Good Sister. So I'm going to start Sparks Like Stars. This is a story of a woman who, her family grew up in Afghanistan, and when they get assassinated, she is smuggled from the scene by a soldier, and 30 years later, she meets the elderly patient who ends up being the soldier, and it sends her on her journey to figure out the truth of what happened and get her revenge. So it is 450 pages, and I am expecting it to be pretty emotional. So I'm gonna give this a shot. I have this and this on audio, so I'm probably going to start the audiobook for this tomorrow. But let's start this and we'll see how this one is. Hi friends, it is Saturday afternoon, and yesterday I ended up finishing Ace of Spades. This is a YA like mystery thriller, and it follows Chiamaka and Devon, and they are the only two Black students at Nidia's prep. It is a private school, and Chiamaka, it comes from a wealthy family. Her mother is Nigerian, her father is Italian. Devon comes from a poor neighborhood with an absent father who is in prison and a mother who works several jobs, and he has brothers and sisters, or I'm not sure how many brothers and sisters. But we open the book with like an opening ceremony for the start of their senior year, where prefects are elected, and Chiamaka gets elected, of course, and she is kind of like the popular girl in school. Everybody loves her, and she is on the fast track to Yale. And then Devon is a boy who wants to go to Juilliard. He is involved in band. They like are very different social circles. They don't really interact at all. And quickly after they get elected for prefect, this blast goes out at school for everybody like on their phones, and it's someone called Aces. They quickly start revealing secrets about Devon and Chiamaka, and it's like it's only them. And we kind of quickly get the unraveling of their secrets. Chiamaka was involved in a hit and run, and she has a crush on her best friend who has a girlfriend, and they have a night together that Chiamaka cannot really remember, and so we are kind of spending the book her trying to piece together her memories of that night. And then we have Devon, who is gay and he is not out, and he has a boyfriend named Dre in his neighborhood, but he knows that his community, like outside of the school, would not be accepting of his sexuality, so he is hiding who he is. And then we have all of these secrets coming forward. There's like a sex tape revealed, all of this crazy stuff. And the story itself is pretty slow. The secrets kind of get revealed very slowly, and you mostly are just like with them living their day to day, going to school and things like that, and then it slowly builds into more like horror aspects. Once there is like a big reveal, I would say 60 to 70% of the way through. I gave this 4 stars. I really liked this. I really liked that it was slow going. I felt like it was appropriate for the overall tone of the book that tackles like racism, classism, white privilege, a bunch of different things. And it's like peeling back the layers of the story. And so you're dealing with the very surface level microaggressions into a very deep-seated issue. And all of these secrets are being revealed about these two, but everybody around them kind of doesn't seem to understand why this is like a bad thing. I liked Chiamaka and I liked Devon, but I felt like his story had more consequences to it. I liked Chiamaka. I think that she was like she was a badass character, and she was like unapologetically feminine, which I really liked. So yeah, I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then I started Sweethand, which is an adult romance, and it follows Charisse and can't remember the hero's name, but they were like friends slash rivals growing up, and then she quickly became best friends with his best friend, and so that's kind of how their friend group worked out. But they also didn't really like each other growing up. Hiro had a crush on her, but he quickly tried to force himself to get over that, and then they are now meeting some years later at his best friend and her sister's wedding, where it's like their engagement process, and she is the bridesmaid, he is the groomsman. What are they called? Best man and maid of honor, yes. And they have to plan some events together, and I'm only a couple of hours in, and it's pretty cute so far. She owns her own like bakery or pastry company or something like that, and he is a music producer, and she has like a very sweet out personality. Like that's the image that she tries to maintain, is that she's very sweet and very caring, and so she is feeling very conflicted about him. He kind of makes her very angry, gets her riled up, but she has to like maintain this image, and he kind of thinks that this image is baloney and that she is like a spitfire. And so he likes to rile her up. And where I'm at now, they haven't had like any interactions with each other, but they have been noticing how attractive each other is. So that is where I am with that. And then I also started Sparks Like Stars. This is what I've been mostly reading. I've just been listening to Sweethand when I'm gaming, but I am 152 pages into this. A girl named Satara, whose family gets killed in front of her, basically, and she gets saved by a soldier. She is the daughter of an advisor to the president of Afghanistan, and this takes place like when she's a kid in the 70s, and there is a coup and she sees her whole family slaughtered, but she gets saved by a soldier who takes her to these two women who are on a mission to get her out of Afghanistan. And I'm kind of just at the part where she is actually out of Afghanistan. It's pretty interesting so far. It's spent a lot of time kind of in the same area. She's been locked in two different apartment buildings, one with the soldier and then one with the two women. So not a whole lot has happened. She has had to figure out how she's going to get to America, and that's pretty much what's been going on. You know when you read something and it like just feels on the cusp of like making you emotional? That's a little bit how I feel, and it might be because I'm only like 100 pages in. I'm not entirely enveloped in her life yet, but that's kind of it. I'm like on the cusp of being emotional about it, or being connected to the story. So I know that it ends with her trying to get revenge and kind of figure out what actually happened to her family. So I'm sure we're going to get a time jump to 30 years later. So I am enjoying it, and I'm hoping to finish it today. It's only 450-ish pages, so I'm almost halfway there, and I am enjoying this. And other than that, that is kind of it for my updates. I haven't really been updating the vlog because I just didn't really feel like sitting down and doing it, but here we are. I started rewatching You Season 1 because after reading You Love Me, I just needed that Season 1 wonderfulness. So that is my update. We are going to talk again when I have read something. Hi friends, I just finished Sparks Like Stars, and I have decided not to rate this. I did hard skim about 105 of the pages at the end. I just get bored of stories like this, to be honest. And I think I need to stop trying to pick up like historical fiction or regular fiction stories that generally don't hold my attention, and I keep doing it and then I end up bored by it. This is a beautifully written story, and it's a lovely story, but it's also a hard story about grief and trauma and everything that comes along with being displaced from your home and being put in a country you're not familiar with and all of that. And it just wasn't interesting to me. Like, it just wasn't a story that I wanted to continue reading. And a lot of the reviews that I read said that this book is very slow in the middle, which it definitely is. once she gets to America and you like fast forward into her adult life, it's incredibly boring, which makes it so that these stories like aren't stories that I generally read, but it makes it even worse because it's slow, and then it already has to be like a really fast-paced, interesting story like this fiction, historical fiction, to keep me interested. And then if it's ever slow, I just kind of lose interest very quickly. So that's kind of what happened with this. But if you're into historical fiction and you want a good story, I would recommend reading this. I will say that I think that the synopsis is a little bit spoilery for this, because in the synopsis it tells you that like 30 years later she meets the soldier that saved her, and that doesn't happen until like here. So all of this, you don't know that, and I feel like that's a little bit like something they should have left out of the synopsis, because it's pretty more than halfway through the book when you find that out. So I think the next thing that I'm going to read is one of my ebooks. I think I would like to start probably the Katie Robert book that's on my TBR, and then I'm also going to read Red Rising. So this is about Darrow, who lives in a caste system, and he is a red, which is like the lower level caste system, and he has to infiltrate the gold, who I think are like the top. And I think there's something to do with like the school or something like that. So I'm gonna start this. I've heard it's fast-paced, and I just want to like get through a book. So I'm going to start this and then the Katie Robert book as well, and we will talk a little bit later on. I just finished The Good Sister. I have decided to give this 3 stars. So this is about Fern and her twin sister Rose, and they are fraternal twins. You're getting alternate points of view. One is Rose's diary and one is like Fern's point of view. And you open up the book with a diary entry from Rose saying that Fern killed someone when they were kids. So then you are flashing to when they're adults. Fern is a librarian, and she has an aversion to really loud things and bright lights and things like that. So, and she lives by herself, and she has her sister Rose, and her mom is in a nursing home almost, or an inpatient center, after she had an overdose and it left her with brain damage. In the beginning of the book, Fern is having her weekly dinner with her sister, and she finds prenatal vitamins in her sister's bag, and her sister is like, you know, I've been trying to get pregnant and I can't. And that's kind of when Fern decides that she is going to get pregnant for her sister and carry her baby for her. And then she meets a stranger in the library, and she decides that that is someone that she's going to seduce and get her pregnant, basically. And then in the journal entries that you're getting from Rose, you are seeing like histories of abuse in the girls' past. Their mother appeared to be very angry and abusive to them verbally. She would neglect them, leave them without food, had very dramatic mood swings, things like that. And she had some boyfriends in the past that were abusive to the girls as well. And I would definitely more call this a domestic drama than a thriller. Nothing really happens. And I think that if I told you that premise, you could probably guess the twist. In this day and age, with all of the people that have read Gone Girl or seen the movie, I don't think this plot device really works on most people, unless you're just one of those people that goes in and just doesn't try to figure anything out, which more power to you. I wish my brain worked that way, but I'm constantly trying to figure out the twists of plots, and it ends up me not enjoying the book if I can figure it out. None of it was particularly shocking to me, and so it kind of just made it a little boring. I think what I would have liked was, because I knew that the ending was the ending, that I wish that things had been leaned more into. So like I'll explain and I'll put a spoilers if you want to skip ahead, but I wish that we had leaned a little bit more into her sister, obsessed with the idea that she's the only person that Fern can turn to, and that her sister was involved a little bit more behind the scenes, because her sister for a portion of this book is away. I wish we had seen a little bit more manipulation from her. Because it's so obvious that it's her sister all along, that her sister is manipulative, I would have liked a little bit more of those scenes, because it felt like it was just creeping along a little bit. And with thrillers and things like that, if you're going for like the slow pace, you usually want to add in scenes, or you usually want to experience scenes that slowly build that anticipation of like something is bad is going to happen. And I think we missed the mark a little bit with this one. So this is a 3-star, and now I think I'm going to move on to Anxious People. I know I said I was going to read Red Rising, but I forgot that I had Anxious People left, and I think it's the only 14-day book that I have left to read. So I'm going to start that. I'm going to end this vlog tomorrow night because I have off tomorrow. It's a bank holiday, so I will be at home reading, etc. I am like 57% of the way through Forever Theirs, and I will say it's more heavy on like the political drama than the relationship drama. So as I said in the about the prequel, she finds out that he is a prince, and that Galen, so it's Meg, Theo, and Galen, and Theo is a prince and Galen is his bodyguard. And so basically all that's happened is a threat was made on her life. Someone attempted to kidnap her, Galen saves her, and now they like moved, or they like left the country to kind of keep her safe. So I will say it's a lot more of like the political aspects. We're getting points of view from Galen's uncle, who is like an advisor to Theo's half-brother, who has taken over his crown. And we're getting more of a history of that. We basically have found out that Theo he was going to be the king, and then the advisors or his uncle or someone brought up false claims that he was an illegitimate child, that his mother was actually still married to her husband, her previous husband, when he was like conceived. So he kind of lost the legitimacy of the title, and so he left and came to America to like be safe or whatever, and him and Galen are planning how to get his kingdom back, and that's kind of mostly what it's been about. And it's okay, like I'm not one for like political drama, especially in my romances particularly. I find it a little bit boring, but it's a pretty short book and I enjoy the couples. So yeah, that's where I am with that. At some point today, I'm probably going to play some Sims, and I will listen to Sweethand while I am doing that, because I haven't really been listening to that. But I'm going to start Anxious People, and we'll talk later. Hi friends, it is Monday, and I just finished Anxious People, and I cried for like the last 30 pages of this book. So this was a 5-star. It was perfection. I have 0 complaints. Like, it was so good. So basically, this is a multiple POV story, and you are following this one day where this bank robbery / hostage situation has happened. You're following someone who tries to rob a bank, fails, and then is trying to escape the police. So they go into a apartment where a like showing is happening, and they hold all the people hostage. And okay, there's something so charming about Bachman's writing where like you are feeling so hopeful, and also it's a little bit funny, but it's also like really emotional, and you connect to the characters. And as you go on, you're dealing with characters and people that aren't necessarily the most likable, but they're all very complex, and they all have their own stories and their own situations. And by the end of the book, you're just like, you just want them to succeed, no matter how awful they started off. So you're following 2 police, and they are a son and a father, and they lost the matriarch of their family recently, and the daughter of the family is addicted to heroin, and they work at the same police station, and this police station is very small, and they are in charge of this hostage situation. The son has always wanted to be a cop. He had something happen in his past that kind of reinforced the idea that he wants to help people. And his dad is just being a dad and really wants to protect him, but also he's very proud of his son. And then we have the bank robber themselves, and they really just need money. Like, their spouse has threatened to take their kids from them because they're essentially homeless. They don't have a job or money to buy a place to live. Like, basically they're gonna lose their kids, and so they take a desperate measure and they try to rob a bank. And then you are also dealing with several characters who are at this apartment showing, and it's 2 couples and 2 single people, and it's heart-wrenching. It's really, really heart-wrenching because you have a character that everybody in the book is dealing with grief or with life changes in some way, and they're all handling it like humans, like imperfect humans, people that lash out or they don't know how to deal with their emotions, or, you know, whatever. And there's one character who I'll say I love. My favorite character in this book is Estelle, and yeah, this is very, very good. And I'm gonna read a couple lines at the end of the book that were really good. I've learned that it helps to talk about it. Unfortunately, I think most people would still get more sympathy from their colleagues and bosses at work if they show up looking rough one morning and say, "I'm hungover," than if you say, "I'm suffering from anxiety." But I think we pass people in the street every day who feel the same as you and I. Many of them just don't know what it is. Men and women going around for months having trouble breathing and seeing doctor after doctor because they think there's something wrong with their lungs, all because it's so difficult to admit that something else is broken, that it's an ache in our soul. Invisible lead weighs in our blood, an indescribable pressure in our chest. Our brains are lying to us, telling us that we're going to die, but there's nothing wrong with our lungs. We're not going to die, you and I. Very good. Highly, highly, highly recommend reading this. I will say that I read some reviews of like 4 and 3 stars, because this doesn't have a single 1 or 2 star book review, but people were like, the beginning is pretty slow, which I will agree, it is pretty slow, but I think it really helps because you are getting these people's like just being people, just being normal people, and yeah, that means that is probably all I'm going to end up finishing for the day. So I will talk about my next reads in my next week's reading vlog. But that is going to be it for this video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below on any of the books that I read in this video. Other than that, I will catch you guys in my next one. Thanks so much for watching.